Welcome to Impact the World, a podcast from West Park Baptist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is where we discuss topics related to how we can all love God, love people, and impact the world. Here's your host, Tara Hayes.
Welcome to the very first episode of Impact the World. It's a podcast from West Park Baptist Church. I am your host, Tara Hayes, and we're excited to have you along for this journey. Today, I have sitting with me Jake Bishop. Hey,
What's up,
Jake.
Tara? How are you?
I'm good.
It's an honor.
How are you?
First one. It's big.
I'm excited. I'm excited
Me
for you
too.
to be here on this little ride together. Just a little bit about myself for some people who may not know me. I have been at West Park for 40 years.
40?
40.
Wow.
I know. I started to think about that. I'm like, it's our first episode. I should have something monumental to say about the first episode. And then I started thinking, I've been here for 2/3 of the history of West Park.
So you've been here longer than Pastor Sam has. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Wow.
I have been.
Okay.
Yes.
So wait, sorry. I have a question. Do you remember your thoughts when he came in? How old were you?
I was 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was excited about him coming. I remember when he candidated, like the first time he ever came to preach. And I was young, but I just remember the adults saying, he seems kind of young.
Good.
But they were all like, but he seems very wise. And it was, I mean, you could tell that he was different than.
And now he's still wise.
He's still wise. We'll just leave it at that. He's very, very wise. But yeah, I remember when Pastor Sam came. And I mean, when he came, he was everything. So he was my pastor, my youth pastor. So
Awesome.
sometime ask him about taking a trip to Cincinnati. He'll shake his head. He'll say, no, I don't want to talk about that. But
Great.
so yeah. So I've been here a little while.
Yeah.
I've also been on staff for 15 years. So I have a little bit of a perspective about West Park. So, yeah. And some people may know me from the choir.
Yeah.
They'll go, oh, that's that girl
Yeah,
that sings
that girl.
in the choir
Yeah.
with the curly hair. So, but tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been here a while, too.
I have.
A couple
Yeah.
of times.
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah, I love it so much I came back.
That's right.
Yeah, my family came here in 2002, so
Okay.
20 years.
Wow.
I was in 4th grade, and then was here until college, left for a little while, came back then to work on staff,
All right.
and then was on staff until 2017. Me and my wife, Allie, we met here.
All right.
We went to Southern Seminary in Louisville, and then down to Austin, Texas to work at a church down there, and now we're back.
You're
so
back.
I don't know how many years that is total, but I've been here a long time.
Hey, we're
So,
going to say 20.
20.
We're
Been here
just
20
gonna-
years, yeah.
Because
Good.
no matter where you have been, we've always been in your heart.
That's true.
That's right.
Yes,
See?
this is home for sure.
That's right. Well, we are thrilled that you are back with us. We are
thank you.
thrilled that
Yeah.
you're here on staff.
And I've been back for a year and a half, so
Oh,
it's
my word.
flown by.
Wow.
So
It has flown by.
Yeah.
Because I remember when they said, Jake Bishop's coming back, and we were all excited. I was very excited that you were coming back. So, because I was sad to see you go.
thank you. I'm glad to be back.
So,
It's good.
yeah, we're
Good
glad.
place.
It is. And I would say, I think people are surprised when I tell them, people outside of the church, that I've been at the same church for 40 years. And I think that's not a testament at all to me.
Mhm.
That is a testament to God and what
Mhm.
He's done at West Park. And that it is home, that this is my family. And if I talk about it too much, I'll get teary because I've been through a lot
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
with this church, and they've been through a lot with
Yeah.
me. And so it's a wonderful place, and I'm excited to see the things that God is doing, areas that we're moving,
Yeah.
things that we're getting ready to do. And this podcast is just one thing.
We have a podcast
We
now.
have a podcast now.
40 years ago. You didn't even know what a podcast
Listen.
weren't things. So
Yeah, I mean, no, there's no way I could have even dreamed this up. I probably wouldn't have even dreamed this up like a year ago, but I'm excited to be
Yeah.
here. So, like I said, there's a lot happening at West Park and a lot of ministries that God is using and things He's changing. And so this podcast, to give just a little bit of an idea of what this is going to look like and why we're doing a podcast. We were sitting as a staff member. I'm on the communication team. So I guess it's appropriate that they're letting me talk.
Yeah, makes sense.
A lot.
Communicate.
I get to communicate. So I'm sitting in the communication team, and we really felt like there's a missed opportunity by not having a podcast, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know that our staff, our pastors, you, Pastor Sam, Pastor Joe, Pastor Al, anybody, Pastor James, spend so much time studying to rightly divide the word of truth every week and to give us a good doctrinal foundation. But there's just not ever enough time to share everything that the Lord has shown you through his word.
Yeah.
And so this, I feel like we as a team was like, this is a great opportunity where we can learn more about, okay, so here's a series that Pastor Sam and the other pastors are going to be bringing. It gives you all opportunity to talk more about things in a conversational way.
Yep.
This is what's exciting about it.
Yeah.
So it's like everybody gets to kind of eavesdrop on a conversation.
And everyone's thinking, aren't the sermons long enough? There is plenty that gets left out every single week, I promise you. So
there's a lot.
They could be longer.
Listen, after you listen to this podcast on Sunday afternoon, you'll thank the Lord that there's
only 58 minutes.
Only
That's
58. Man, we could have gone another hour or two. So this gives a great venue for that, and it's a more conversational where we can feel like not only are we learning more of what God has taught you all, the Holy Spirit, but we get to know the pastors better, and we get to know ministry leaders better. And so we kind of understand the heart of the church and the direction of the church better. So that's one thing, but we also don't want to just have knowledge for knowledge's sake, because that's not been, I don't think you would ever get up on a Sunday and say, I hope everybody comes so that they can get smarter. I mean, the ultimate goal, obviously, is to be transformed, to become more like Christ. And when we become more like Christ, then we can impact our world. And that's kind of where that comes from. That's why we've chosen. At West Park, we have the saying, love God, love people, impact the world. And I think a lot of times it's real easy for us to focus on loving God and loving people, but to kind of leave out there needs to be an impact. We're not just doing it to check it off a list or to say, hey, I know more stuff. So I'm excited about this format.
Yeah, me too.
And what we're going to get to do through this. And I think it also, because we are trying to use this to impact, I think every episode, for the most part, we're going to kind of end with the question. It's kind of the big so what? What am I going to do with all this information now? How does this impact you? How do you see this as impacting you? How is this going to impact? How do we use this to impact our world? Because that's the ultimate goal. So do you have anything to add to that?
No, that is music to my ears. I'm excited. Right? That's the goal, right? So, Paul talks in Romans 12, don't be conformed to the world, be transformed into the image of Jesus, right? That's our goal.
Yes.
That's what I see my goal as, waking up every morning for myself and for anyone that I'm a pastor to. And so, that's the hope. And if a podcast helps with that,
hey,
let's do a podcast.
Let's do it. I love that you brought up that verse, because that's, as I was thinking about this today and preparing, that is like the verse that came to my mind. Don't be conformed, but be transformed. And the best way we can be transformed is to be equipped. And this podcast will help equip us.
Good segue.
Good segue. But the real reason we're going to start this conversation with Jake
You've done this before. You've been on the radio. I can tell.
I've had radio aspirations for many years.
You've practiced.
Here we are. I won't tell you how many conversations I have with myself in the car. But I hope that everybody does that. I hope that people aren't going, okay, she's crazy. We always knew there was something off about her.
They were having a conversation with themselves, listening to this in the car, so it's okay.
Yes.
You're heard now. It's
okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I have people out there somewhere that have had these conversations. But yes, so the real meat of episode 1 is to talk about equipping classes. And there's no better way than just to dive in. So what are equipping classes, Jay?
That's good. Well, I'm a big fan of ministries that just have the vision for the ministry in their name, right? Like kind of like this podcast, right? Impact the world. What are we doing this for? We want to impact the world.
Let's train make it
you
easy.
So equipping classes. What's the point? To be equipped, right? And so that's straight out of Ephesians 4:12. I hope I have that right. I should know that. But where, ministers are called to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And so, I mean, when I think of what these are for, I've used this before, this story, but I use it in an announcement. No one listens to the announcements anyway. So, it's, we're trying.
I would love to say that they do listen to the announcements.
No, if you're giving an announcement on stage on Sunday morning, you can just tell from people's faces. They're just like, let's get to whatever. So I'm going to say it again because you all don't remember me telling you this. But
multiple times, never
there we
hurts.
go. Yep.
Never hurts.
So there's this story from the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And Bonhoeffer was a pastor, theologian in Germany. And when the Nazis took over, he saw this really concerning thing happening where the church was actually kind of falling in with Hitler. And so he got concerned, obviously, for good reasons, and started this thing called Finkenwald, which was an underground seminary just training
By the way,
up.
thanks for not naming it Finkenwald.
Finkenwald, which would be awesome. Like, that would be amazing. I thought about it. But he started this thing called Finkenwald, and it was an underground seminary and just training people up on the way of Jesus. So training them up on the Sermon on the Mount, theological training, just going really hardcore and equipping these pastors and Christians in following Jesus, especially in this country that was now under Hitler. And he wrote a couple books during that time. So Life Together is one of the most famous ones, classic on community, Cost of Discipleship. So read those, great books. But he wrote these books, and a friend read them and got kind of concerned and actually felt like Dietrich had lost his mind a little bit. Like this was a little too much, right?
You've crossed a line, Dietrich.
Yeah, so it is. He just felt like he was kind of a little too serious, right? Cost of Discipleship, he talks about cheap grace and kind of goes after easy Christianity, I guess you could say. And this guy comes to see Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and Bonhoeffer says, let's go on a walk. So they go on a walk, and they, get in a boat, and they row down the river, and they go to the top of this hill. And when they get to the top of this hill, they look down, and there's this training camp where they are training Nazi soldiers. Wow. And so, you look down here, and there's all these young men being trained in the ways of Hitler and Nazism. And Bonhoeffer gets up there, and he points back at Finkenwald, his underground seminary, and he says, our equipping has to be stronger than their equipping.
Wow.
Our equipping has to be stronger than their equipping. And then the story goes that, the trip back was total silence, right? His friend got the point.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with that.
and I tell that because, no matter what time we're living in, we are always tempted to be conformed to the world. That's what we already talked about, Romans 12, right? We are always tempted to be conformed to the image of the world that we live in. I always think of it as, if you had braces or been to the orthodontist, you remember that thing? They put that little...
the stuff that makes you gag.
The stuff that makes you gag. It's horrible. And you're sitting there, and it's dripping down your throat,
it's
and
like
you feel like
dough.
it's horrible.
Oh, it's horrible.
But what happens is they take it out, and it has conformed into the shape of your teeth, right? And so that's what the world does to us. It conforms us. It takes our soul and it conforms us into its image. And so we are constantly, when we talk about formation or equipping, we're not working from a blank slate. We're working against that.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have to, because we have an upbringing, our families, we have Netflix, we have our phones, we have all these things that are disforming us, right? And we have to then be formed into the image of Jesus. And so, long answer for what's the point of equipping classes? To equip us to both look more like Jesus as opposed to our world, and then go impact the world, right? So I think, because just to your point, you nailed it earlier. You said something that a lot of pastors I don't think get, because, a lot of pastors I think have picked up, and, just not to go down a nerdy rabbit hole, but there's this thing called the Missional Movement, and it's great, right? It was all about hey, let's get people out sharing
Right.
their faith, reaching their communities. And the problem, I think, with that people have seen now that this has been a thing for a decade or two, is people aren't doing it because they're not equipped to do it.
Right.
So you can get up all day long and say, go share your faith, go do this, go do that. And they can't disciple others because they're not being discipled
Right.
themselves.
They don't have the practical side.
There we go.
I
Yeah.
love God. I love people. But now what?
I don't know how to impact the world.
Right. I don't know what that
Exactly.
looks like.
And so what are equipping classes? Okay, if you've ever been stuck on how do I actually, if you feel like you don't have the training necessary, that's the goal,
Yeah.
right? That's the goal, is
Yeah.
to just equip you to be able to impact the world.
Right.
So, sorry, long answer
No, I
to
think
your
it's
very
great
simple
because
question.
I think it's very important for people to understand what an equipping class is. And it kind of answers the second question I have, like, why take an equipping class? Because our culture, like you said, is working overtime.
Yep.
I mean, Satan is roaming the earth,
Yep.
and he is pushing and pushing and trying to conform us to this world, to our culture.
Yep.
Education is taking people down. I mean, so many avenues are trying to form them to everything that is which is like antithesis of what God would have.
Yeah, that's good.
And so it's constant work.
Yep. And just to that point, let me specify, like, equipping classes aren't the only way to be equipped, obviously.
Right.
Taking an equipping class doesn't mean you're a super Christian or whatever. That's
Right.
not the scorecard. But it is hopefully a means to be equipped. And you should obviously be doing things on your own, right? But I guess how I would summarize it is, like, we want you to be equipped because we love you, and we want you to be trained up and want you to impact the world. And what I've seen in myself is that community is helpful in that.
Very
And so I always say, I've trained for probably 30 half marathons in my life, and I've
Wow.
run 2.
I've trained for 0 and hence run 0.
So your percentage is much better than mine. So congratulations.
I'm 100%.
Yes. So my percentage is very bad, but the 2 is because both of those I did it with a group of people, and we trained together. This last one I did with my wife, who was pregnant, so that really
Wow.
pushed me because
I'm telling you.
she's amazing. So that
You're like, listen, I can't have a pregnant lady beat me.
I know. I ran that race. I was so nervous because at one point I was dying. I was like, she's gonna beat me. She's gonna beat me, and she's pregnant.
Beat by a pregnant woman.
But did it with her and my brother, my sister and her husband. And I was able to do it because I had community around me. So,
Right.
There's so many days I didn't want to go run. I didn't want to go train. But they were going to be there.
Right.
And they were going to make fun of me if I didn't. Right? Or, lovingly rebuke me or whatever. And so, okay, we're called to be equipped. We need to do things to help us to be equipped, to train us up. Why not do that with your church family, right? And so
Who
we're
better?
trying to put these on Sunday mornings right before you come to the worship service to come be equipped with others that can hold you accountable, that are going to hopefully notice if you're not there, check
Yes.
up on you.
Yes.
And so that's it doesn't, if you're not coming to equipping class, it doesn't mean that you're not a Christian or not a good Christian or not equipped, right? Like
Right.
that's those two things don't equal each other. But we're just trying to give you an opportunity to be equipped with other people, because I think that's huge.
It is huge, and I think it's a first level, it's a starting point.
It is.
And we're going to
Absolutely.
talk about in many episodes of this podcast other ways to equip ourselves.
Yeah.
Have some ideas, for resources and stuff like that. But this is a first step.
It
Like
is.
you said, you're here on a Sunday morning. You're
Mhm.
with people that you love, that love you.
Good coffee.
And good coffee.
Yeah,
It's important.
that's it.
The nectar of heaven. So it's very important. It's an excellent first step. And the thing too that I think cannot be forgotten is there are a lot of things in the world that can, it goes back to the world is trying to transform us.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that comes under the guise of religious
Mhm.
or spiritual. And I think the thing about taking an equipping class in your church is you can trust
Mm-hmm.
the biblical foundation
Yeah.
of it, which is key.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody needs to know you're going to be hearing a lot from Jake on these podcasts, but coming up, I mean, we want to talk about theology
Mm-hmm.
and why that is not dry. It's important theology. our orthodoxy,
Yep.
all of that. So I think doing that at church is the best first level.
Agreed.
And I don't know, I'm excited. I'm very excited about equipping classes. I think they're pretty new to West Park. I mean, we're just finishing our first year. We're getting ready to head to year 2.
Well, that's a good time. Let me ask you, because I've never been in one. I've just taught them. What's your experience? As the first year, done it for a year, you took one. What was that like? What'd you take, and how was it?
I did the one taught by Mickey Sims and Paul
So
Wimmeyer.
engaging the world.
Engaging the world. I'm like, impacting the world. No, that's not it.
Engaging. Same thing. We could have called it
basically,
Impacting the World,
engaging the world, and it was very good. And you have enough people that attend, so you get to know people better within the class. There's a lot of good discussion about how, what does it look like to engage the world. We learned a little bit about what other people believe.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think that's important, because you don't want to dive too deep into that, but you need to know like what they think and why they're thinking it, so that you can say, oh, well, this is what I believe and why I believe it, and why I do what I do. So it was good. And then during the second semester, my husband and I did take Pastor Sam's prayer class, which was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, and I recommend any of those. We're excited. We haven't talked about what we're going to take this year.
So.
But
I got a suggestion, but just
trust me,
just kidding. They're all great.
They are all great. Yeah. They are all great. So we'll get to, in a few minutes, I want you to tell us what equipping classes we have available, and just give a quick rundown of that. But before we do that, people are like, so I know there's a lot of discussion. One of the other things that we're really talking about a lot is community through these equipping classes, but we also have a community group ministry. So how do you see those working together, equipping classes and community groups?
That's good. Again, I love things that are named the vision, right? So what's equipping classes
we're
about?
We're simple people.
There we go. I love it, right? So equipping classes are for equipping. Community groups are for community. And so we need both, right? Like Bible talks about both. So we need fellowship with other believers. We should be in Christian community. We should have others speaking into our lives. And we need to be equipped. And so you need to do those two things.
Right.
And so we just think in this season that it is best to have those two separate places. And there is a little crossover, because you mentioned it. Equipping classes, when you put a bunch of believers in a room together, community will form to an extent, right? You get, you're going to get, but that's not the goal. Right. Okay. So the scorecard for an equipping class is not how many people did I meet, how close am I with these people. I would just say, if you're looking for your Christian community in an equipping class, you're probably not going to find it. Right. That's just not the goal. It's not what they're meant to do. Yeah. But at community groups, and it kind of goes both ways, right? Community groups, we can sometimes say, like, we can judge those based off of how was I equipped? And that does, community forms you 100%. We're going to study the Bible. So that's going to form you. Like, you're going to learn stuff. But the goal is community, right? The goal is
life together.
Life together, right? That is the goal. I just got, it's people that are going to pray for you, people that when you go through a hard time, they're going to rally around you. It's people that I look and I say, those people, they're my responsibility, right? And you look around the room and it's like, these people may not even be it's possible they wouldn't even be my friends if it wasn't for Jesus, but like, they're my community, and we're committing to each other. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. And so those two things, I think, very much complement each other. And so again, I won't step on, I'm sure you'll have Joe on to talk community groups.
We'll have
so him. I won't talk about that too much, but like community groups, we need community. It's important. Again, the same thing I would say about equipping classes. It's not, we're not judging your spiritual health off of being in a community group. But I can say this, you need to be in community. Okay? If you're not in community, if you're a Christian who's not in community with other believers, then you're going to be stunted. Your growth is going to be stunted.
But I think in some levels it's almost, it sounds dramatic, but spiritually dangerous.
Yeah.
You're just wandering around by yourself.
Yeah. Well, so I'll give you another analogy. We've been talking a lot about the world affecting us. Satan, right, rules this world. So, I always think of, I was watching. You ever watch those like nature documentaries?
Yes.
Like, it's like Planet Earth, whatever. They just came out with a new one on Netflix that Obama is like the narrator. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
Worth
I've
checking
seen
out.
that. Okay.
His voice isn't as good as like the British dude. You
Right.
know, that's like it's like hard. David Attenborough. I think.
Yes,
It's hard to beat
It's
him.
hard
But
to beat
they're
that
great. But
voice,
it's perfect. But those I love those things. Like me and Allie, like that's what we turn on when we go to bed. Like it's just they're awesome. But there's this theme that is repeated over and over again if you think about it, right? So you have like basically some kind of really cute animal. So let's say like a gazelle or an antelope or let's say antelope. And there's just one baby. And you're like, oh, yeah, and you've like named it. You're like Anthony the antelope. Oh, like I want one. Like I want it in my backyard. Please.
Please, I need a baby antelope.
And then like, Tony kind of walks away. And what's the next scene going to be? Tony walks away from the herd, and what's the next scene? The cheetah pops out, like, right, and like Tony's toast.
Tony,
like, yeah, Tony is toast. And so, like, that's you said it. Like, we need community because Satan prowls around like a lion, like looking for someone to devour.
Right.
And guess what he's looking for? The one who isn't in community. Right. The one who isn't in community with other believers. There is safety in community. And so so to answer what's the difference, well, I think you need both, right? You need both.
Agree.
You need, and again, I'm big on like, it doesn't have to be the program we're offering you, but you need to be equipped and you need community.
Right.
And if you don't have those, then yeah, I worry for you as a Christian.
Well,
right?
I do too, frankly. I mean, it's the biblical picture of Jesus going after. He has the 99, and the one is lost, and he goes after that one. And in my life, I look back, and I think, man, there are so many times I would have had opportunity to go down a path that would have not ended well. Would have completely changed my life. But I think about friends that I had growing up or during those seasons. Some of those people are still my friends. I mean, 40 years was, and I look back at that, and that community, that Christian community, definitely impacted my life and helped steer what direction I went in, who I became. So they're important. They go hand in hand for sure. And like you said, I will have Pastor Joe on, and we'll dive into community groups and give that a little more foundation. But I'm excited about community groups, about equipping classes. So tell us, for those who might not know, what equipping classes are we offering? And explain the cycle, because I know we're basically doing the same thing every year, and the goal of the years is to make your way through all the classes.
Yes, exactly. And you said that earlier, and I was like, I forgot the list, but I think I know them. So it's gonna realize like, no,
the
but
list.
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this off the top of my head.
I have confidence you can do it.
So the cycle is basically everything goes on a year rotation, right? And so there's a fall semester, there's a spring semester, and then there's a summer classes, 2 of them. And so this fall, we've been through it one time. This fall, we'll be starting back over with the classes that we did last year, with one caveat to that. So I'll talk about that in a second. So let me see if I can get these. I'll start with my class because I know that one. So we have the theology track. So that's what I'm teaching. And so basically I'll just talk about the fall semester. It's basically systematic theology. So going through the big questions of the faith, doctrine, things like that. So everything from what is the Bible? Who is God? To the controversial stuff, like what is election and what happens when Jesus comes back and all those fun stuff. So the hope is, to kind of give you a foundation of, systematic theology. Theology is just the study of God. So we're learning about God. And so basically I'm like, what's better than coming to the church on Sunday morning, grabbing a cup of coffee and talking about God? That's basically what we're doing, every week.
I think this I think so many people say theology and it's heavier than it needs to be. I mean, who doesn't, like you said, who doesn't want to talk about God?
Exactly. That's it.
I mean, that's what our life centers around. So
exactly. So that's what we're doing. We're not trying to just, I try not to not make it too heavy, right? Heady, things like that. It's not seminary level or anything like that. But I think it will.
Union.
Yeah, we may talk about that one week, but that's okay. I try to make it and try to be application heavy as well. Because the thing is, like, all the stuff you're learning, it's not just dry things. It affects your life, right?
It's to impact
the world. And so I'm a theology nerd, so I look forward to that. So we'll do that. So that's one of them. Al Cage, and then he has help from Terry Cage, and then the Blevins, Fred and Ruth. They kind of all team up and do this one called Heartwise that runs for the entire year. And it is, you just need to ask Al about it. It sounds awesome.
I've already got a plan to talk to him. Yeah.
That is one of the ones that I'm like, I want to take that. Like, well, it looks, Al is he knows his stuff. Dr. Al, I should say, right?
Al Cage.
And so it's an opportunity to learn from Dr. Al, and really just he's hitting on. Look at his topics are just varied. Like it's broad, but if you think biblical counseling might be in your future, like that's something you want to grow in, that's a great class. If you just want to understand yourself better,
I was
going to
say, if you want to counsel yourself,
you want to counsel yourself,
which as believers we're supposed to do.
Exactly, that's a good place. And so you got good, gifted teachers in there, and that class seems awesome. So that's Heartwise is what that one's called. Pastor Joe is doing a basics track, and so he teaches 3 different classes. So everything from studying the Bible to fear of man. So there's a great little book called When People Are Big and God is Small.
That's a great
book.
Good.
So he's working through that. And then, Discerning God's Will for Your Life. So he will tell you if you are single and want to know who to marry, he's going to help you with that. If you are, if you are looking for a new job, like basically go to that class.
Where should I move, Pastor Joe?
Get all the answers. Joe is your magic 8 ball to tell you everything that you need to know in this class.
I can see him shaking his head.
He is dying
He's
right
like,
now.
Oh.
You're a heretic. It's Joe's favorite sentence. So that's what he's saying about
heretic.
So no, but that's Joe is obviously a gifted teacher, and so those are. I got to teach a class in the spring semester with Joe, and it's awesome. So, those are great. Just basics of the Christian life, basically. You mentioned Mickey and Paul. So Mickey Sims, Paul Waymeyer, 2 of our elders. So they teach the Engaging the World track. And so they are doing, the first semester is basically in a mixture of evangelism and apologetics. And then actually in the spring semester, we actually have Greg and Suzanne Pitts coming in to help teach a really practical class on evangelism. And so they've been, missionaries for 2 decades. They teach this class through Cru, and so they're going to come in and teach a 9-week practical class on evangelism. And so we'll have a semester where you hear Mickey and Paul, 2 of the smartest guys I know. Kind of like,
you want to talk about heady.
Yeah, they know their stuff, obviously. 2 doctors, right? A lawyer and a professor. And so they're, that's going to be helpful of just thinking through evangelism and apologetics. And then the Pitts are going to teach a little bit even more hands-on of like how to start those conversations. And that'll be in the January session. Let me think. So I talked about mine. I talked about Al's. I talked about Joe's. I talked about Paul and Mickey.
Family.
There we go. So that is Rich McKinney. We'll be teaching that this year. And so, if you know Rich's kids, not to put pressure on them, but they're awesome. So like, pressure. Obviously, the McKinneys are doing something right. So
yeah, I have heard that they are doing something right with their kids. And I've heard that he's a fantastic teacher.
Yes, he is.
I've not actually gotten to sit in a class that he's taught, but I've heard he is great.
Yeah, and Maggie's a part of that as well. And so they're leading that. And I think they're starting with I think it's parenting and marriage here in the first semester. And so, parenting, and I'll make another, I'm sure that, I didn't ask Rich about this, but I'm sure that's one, if you are an older saint who has been there, done that, raised kids, didn't mess them up too bad, and you're like, hey, like I have some wisdom to give, like, hey, like that would be awesome to show up at that class and meet some people who are just trying to figure it out,
and mentor people.
Yes, exactly. And so you could, even if community. That class, I know last year they did it very much sitting in a circle, able to have a conversation, things like that. And so that would be awesome if you've already been there, done that, and think you have something to add.
Yeah.
Come and just pour into some of our younger families, because that's one exciting thing we got going on here at West Park is we have young families coming in. Like, I mean, I think we had, at one point we had 11 babies due, like kind of all within a couple month period. And so I don't know how many of those have come at this point, but
quite a few.
So we have a lot
Some are very close to coming.
Yeah. So we have a lot of parents just trying to figure it
Right.
out, including the person talking to you right now. So yeah, your wisdom is helpful there. And so that's 5. And then we have a 6th one, James Lynch, and that is the Bible overview track. So that one meets in the main auditorium, and that one's the one that's different. So all the other ones are repeating what they did last year. So if you were in that class last year, better to move on, because unless you just really need that, like to hear it again, move on. We take another class, learn from it. Just, I think that's going to be good. James is actually going to be teaching his class on a 4-year rotation, where he so every year will be a little bit different. And so the way you can kind of view his is he's just drilling down a little bit deeper every year. So last year was Bible overview of the Old Testament.
I know, he killed it on that.
Oh yes,
wow.
Somehow like the whole Old Testament in like what
in a semester?
Yeah, 18 weeks.
Yes,
he's good. He's good. And then this year he's just focusing on the patriarchs. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, just talking about them. And so that's kind of the where he's going over the course of 4 years. He'll go a little deeper.
That's
deeper.
awesome.
And so that'll be a good...
He's a great teacher, too.
Yeah, he is. And so that's it. That's the 6.
Wow.
And I mean, you would benefit from any of them, obviously, right? Like even, I mentioned the family one. You may think, well, like my kids are gone. Well, again, there's an opportunity there as well. And so the hope is it would take you 6 years to get through everything that we're offering. Well, actually, if you take James, that could be 10 years, right?
Like say 10 years.
Yeah. So
I'm on the 10-year plan.
There we go. Yeah. And then
kind of like college.
There we go. Nice.
Just kidding.
It was only 6.
It was just
then the spring we'll do the same thing, and then the summer we'll probably mix those up every year.
Different.
But that's where we are.
Wow. I'm excited about equipping classes. I can't wait to see how God continues to use them.
Yeah, me too.
And people grow and move forward.
Yeah, we believe in them, and after a year, I believe in them more than I did a year ago, just hearing feedback and how God's used them, and so...
Well, I know when I heard that we were going to equipping classes, I know a lot of people are like, I miss my ABF. Mm-hmm. I miss my Sunday school. And I get that. But I think in the culture that we are in and in the world, it is important for us to be equipped and to know. I mean, what are we doing with what we know?
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think this whole episode has kind of answered the why, so what of this information, but
for the classes and the podcast, I think, right? Like our hope is, and I know your vision when you came and talked to me about this was impact the world, right?
Yeah.
Like this is another thing in your car ride to just be hopefully equipped, right?
Yes.
We want to help you as much as we can here at West Park in all areas that we can to help you be transformed into the image of Jesus. And I'll add this, for the sake of others.
For the sake of
others, so that you can then look more like Jesus yourself, and then in turn love others better.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's like the perfect wrap up. I mean, that's exactly what we want to do. And I am excited about what's to come in the podcast and in the equipping classes. So, like I said, be ready, because I feel that Jake will be my sidekick often.
Good, because I brought her coffee today. So that's how that works.
I almost had to drink plain water.
Oh no, can't do that.
That's rough. But yeah, so I'm excited about what's to come, and I'm excited to have you come back. And if anybody has any questions about anything we've talked about today, especially if you have questions about the equipping classes, you can get on the website, www.westparkbaptist.org, or you can send an email to equipping@westparkbaptist.org. Or you can always go old school and call the church.
Oh, no. No, I don't. That gives
don't
me
ask
anxiety.
if you call the
Call
church.
Joe Capel.
Don't
Joe
ask
Capel.
for Jake.
Just talk to Joe or
Talk to
Ian.
Joe.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
No, but I mean, don't call Jake. But if you have questions about
I don't
West
answer
Park,
phone calls, but everything else, I'm happy.
Okay.
In-person conversation, whatever.
I know we're wrapping this up, but that makes me laugh. Jake and I have passed offices back and forth multiple times.
Yep.
So at one point, I moved into a different part of campus, into his office because he wasn't technically using it at the time. So I moved in, took it over. His phone was sitting in the office, and the message light was blinking. And who knows? He was like, yeah, I don't know how long that's been blinking. I don't even know how many messages are on there. So text
me.
Jake.
Text me.
Email. But anyway.
Send a carrier pigeon. anything but a call.
Anything but actually talking on the phone. Anyway. No, but we're excited. But if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We would love to help you. And it doesn't have to be a question about equipping classes or the podcast. Just anyway, reach out to us. We're excited to share with you in the future, and we're so glad that you joined us today. Jake, thanks for being with me. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Impact the World, produced by West Park Baptist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing with a friend.